The light filtering through the single-barred window of your cell tells you it's perhaps an hour past dawn. Soon Doctor will arrive with his assistants to begin the daily ritual of keeping you alive enough to die entertainingly. But for now, there's this moment, this brief suspension between sleep and performance, where you can simply exist in your own skin without someone evaluating its market value. Your skin, speaking of which, bears the accumulated story of your career like a badly edited manuscript. There's the scar on your left bicep from that Gaul who fought like he was trying to chop wood rather than kill a man. Effective, but inelegant. Your hands look like a craftsman's now, which in a way, you suppose they are. Breakfast will be served soon in the communal dining area, a generous term for what amounts to a stone room with benches, where they distribute the carefully calculated nutrition meant to keep gladiators in fighting condition. Barley porridge, usually mixed with beans and the occasional bit of meat that's been boiled into submission. The walls of your cell are perhaps 8 feet by 6, generous by gladiator standards, cramped by any human standard. The stone blocks are fitted together with a kind of precision that makes you appreciate Roman engineering, even while you curse Roman entertainment. At least when they imprison you, they do it properly. Roman crowds may enjoy their blood sport, but they prefer their gladiators to maintain certain anatomical arrangements until the actual dying begins. The soles of your feet have thickened into leather over the years, developing calluses on top of calluses until you can walk across the practice arena without wincing. That would be Marcus Aurelius Scaurus, the lanista who owns this establishment and everyone in it. He's what passes for your master, though he prefers the term manager, as if calling slavery by a different name makes it more palatable. There's something almost comforting about the certainty of it. No need to wonder what today might bring, because someone else has already planned it for you. It's slavery, but it's efficient slavery, and efficiency is what the empire does best. Scaurus has the particular combination of business acumen and casual cruelty that makes for a successful gladiator trainer. Your body is a map of Rome's entertainment preferences. Broader shoulders from endless, sword work thicker forearms from gripping shield scars, placed with almost artistic precision by opponents who understood the crowd's desire for just enough blood to be exciting, but not so much as to be merely gruesome. You are, in your way, a work of art, violent, temporary art. He can calculate the exact monetary value of a severed limb and display. Genuine concern for your health in the same conversation. It's the same light that will illuminate the sand of the Colosseum when you next fight, though it will seem different there, harsher, more demanding. Light in the arena has a quality that transforms everything it touches into spectacle. Even death becomes theatrical under that particular illumination. It's one of those adaptations the human body makes when circumstances do'n't leave it much choice, like how your eyes have learned to function in the dim light of the cell's Roman engineering extends to water management. And even gladiators benefit from the empire's obsession with aqueducts and sanitation. It's one of the few advantages of being valuable property. They keep you clean enough to avoid dying of preventable diseases before you can die of entertainment-related injuries. Your name is written on those tablets, along with your fighting record, your market value, and probably a note about your tendency toward what Scaurus calls excessive introspection. Apparently, thinking too much is bad for business in the gladiator trade. It interferes with the proper display of noble savagery that audiences expect, or how your ears can distinguish between the sound of a practice sword hitting a wooden post and a real sword hitting human bone. It's made from hide that's been tanned, but not particularly well, so it has that distinctive smell of animal skin that never quite stops being animal. You've grown used to carrying the scent of dead creatures with you, in your clothing, in your equipment, in your very identity. No expense spared in the construction of your confinement. They call it Sagina, the fattening diet, though it's designed more for building muscle than satisfying hunger. Everything here is calculated, measured, weighed. Your food, your exercise, your rest, your entertainment value. You are livestock with a speaking part. The craft just happens to be staying alive, while other people try very hard to make you stop doing that. Which, when you think about it, isn't entirely inaccurate. Except bulls don't have to worry about their fighting technique, or their ability to die gracefully for the entertainment of others. It's specialized work, and like all specialized work in the Empire, it comes with its own peculiar indignities. The puckered mark on your thigh, where a trident prong found its target during your first fight, has a Reciarius. Cartwheels on stone. The calls of vendors setting up their stalls. The distant lowing of cattle being driven to market. It's the sound of free people doing free things. And it has a quality that your ears have become particularly attuned to. The casual carelessness of those who don't have to perform their lives for others' amusement. You've added your own marks over the months, though nothing so optimistic as counting days until freedom. It's practical clothing, designed to be replaced rather than mended, though you've mended it anyway, because the alternative is nakedness, and even gladiators have some dignity left to lose. The fabric has that particular texture that comes from being washed in communal tubs with soap that has more ash than fat. It scratches against your skin in a way that's become so familiar you hardly notice it anymore, like living with a minor but persistent itch. Freedom is a concept that gladiators discuss the way sailors discuss mermaids. Pretty to think about, probably fictional, and likely to kill you if you actually encounter it. You'd been so concerned with looking graceful with the net that you'd forgotten the fundamental principle of not getting stabbed. Tiberius is what we might charitably call theatrical, a bestiarius who fights wild animals and believes that volume equals ferocity. The man could frighten a dormouse with his battle cry, but put him against a lion, and he goes quiet as a Vestal virgin at a dinner party. Still, the crowd loves a good roar, and Tiberius has built a modest reputation on his ability to project menace even while retreating at considerable speed. Amateur mistake. The kind that keeps you awake at night, not from pain, but from the memory of how stupid you felt lying there in the sand with bronze stuck in your leg while 50,000 people made that collective. Oh, sound that Romans make when they see blood. You flex your fingers, feeling the calluses that have built up from gripping weapons day after day. The wooden door of your cell bears scratches from previous occupants. Tallies, names, crude drawings of things better left unimagined. From somewhere in the warren of corridors that make up the underground portions of the ludus, you hear the familiar sound of Tiberius practicing his roar. Your stomach announces its presence with a sound like a leather bag deflating. The irony isn't lost on you that outside these walls, Roman citizens pay enormous sums to watch you fight, while inside, you're fed like a prized bull being prepared for sacrifice. You sit up on your mattress, and the straw crackles with a sound like small bones breaking. Through the window, you can hear the sounds of Rome beginning its daily routine. Your tunic, if we being generous with terminology, is made of rough wool that was probably brown once, but is faded to the color of old blood mixed with dust. The leather subligiculum you wear beneath serves the dual purpose of modesty and protection, though it's primarily practical. Your feet are bare, of course. Gladiators fight barefoot, partly for tradition and partly because proper footwear is expensive, and gladiators are, ultimately, expendable. From the corridor comes the sound of footsteps, the measured tread of someone who knows exactly where they're going and expects everyone else to get out of their way. The footsteps pause outside your cell, and you hear the familiar sound of wax tablets being consulted, the daily scheduling of human entertainment. The footsteps move on, and you're left with the knowledge that somewhere on those tablets, your immediate future has been decided by someone who thinks of you as a capital investment. You stretch, feeling the familiar protests of muscles that have been trained to the edge of their capability, and then pushed a little further. The morning light has strengthened now, and you can see dust motes dancing in the single beam that penetrates your cell. Your water ration sits in a clay cup beside your mattress, boiled, cooled, and flavored with just enough wine to kill whatever bacterial life might have survived the boiling process. The water tastes of clay and distant mountains, with that faint metallic undertone that comes from traveling through lead pipes. You've heard the Greek physicians argue about whether lead pipes affect the mind, but then again, Greek physicians will argue about anything if you give them enough wine and a captive audience. Besides, if lead poisoning were really a concern, half the Roman nobility would be drooling into their togas by now. Though, come to think of it, you hear the sound of the great doors opening, the massive wooden barriers that separate the gladiator quarters from the training yards above. Soon the daily routine will begin. Exercises designed to build specific muscles for specific types of killing. There's Brutus, who killed a man in a tavern fight and discovered he had a talent for it. Marcus the Gaul, who was captured in the wars and decided that gladiator training was preferable to crucifixion. Quintus, who volunteered for gladiator school because he owed money to the wrong people and thought fighting for his life was easier than running from debt collectors. There's Lucius, who specializes in sword work and has never met a metaphor he couldn't turn into a lecture about proper footwork, a shield that's seen better decades, and a helmet that will protect your head while ensuring that your face remains visible to the crowd. Roman metallurgy in service of Roman entertainment, with just enough protection to keep you alive and just enough exposure to keep you interesting. It's the kind of practical compromise that characterizes everything about gladiator life. Everything is designed with the audience in mind. Even your safety equipment is theatrical. The irony of being kept in a building full of men who are also technically livestock for sale is not lost on you. And politics and the price of bread with the casual entitlement of people who own their own lives. Your mind has learned its own survival techniques, a kind of detached observation that allows you to watch your own life as if it were happening to someone else. It's the mental equivalent of scar tissue, protecting you from the full impact of your circumstances while still allowing you to function within them. Their problems seem distant and almost quaint from inside the ludus. Rome is beginning another day of being the center of the civilized world, and you're beginning another day of being property and service of that civilization's need for entertainment. The disconnect would be amusing if it weren't so complete. It's a sound that penetrates every corner of the ludus, impossible to ignore or sleep through. The barley porridge that awaits will quiet the protest without particularly satisfying it. Nutrition is practical necessity rather than pleasure. You occupy a middle position in this hierarchy, experienced enough to be valuable, successful enough to be respected, but not so successful as to be either cocky or obviously marked for early retirement. Though after 3 years, you've learned to find small satisfactions in the simplest things. Hot food when it's cold, cool water when it's hot, dreamless sleep when you can manage it. Roman efficiency again. Why send messengers to wake people individually when you can simply make a noise that will wake everyone simultaneously? Broad shoulders, narrow waist, scars in aesthetically pleasing locations. They want their gladiators to look dangerous, but not deformed, powerful, but not brutish. It's physique as performance art, with the art being the suggestion of barely contained violence. What's a tax increase to a man whose life is scheduled in advance by someone else? It's not an unhandsome face, though it's no longer the face you were born with. Experience has edited your features the way a sculptor might refine a rough statue, removing softness, emphasizing angles, creating something that looks like it belongs in an arena. It's partly training and partly instinct. The body as adaptation to an environment where sudden movements might be interpreted as threats and sluggish. Movements might be interpreted as opportunities. What's political instability to someone whose main concern is avoiding perforation by sharp objects? At least cattle don't have to worry about their entertainment value or their ability to die gracefully in front of strangers. Roman engineering extends to many things, but comfortable bedding for gladiators is not one of them. Comfort is considered bad for fighting spirit, apparently. You've learned to sleep, despite the sounds of other men's nightmares, to eat food that exists purely for nutritional function, and to exist in a state of constant physical readiness that would exhaust most people within days. Though you suspect it has more to do with cost-effectiveness than warrior philosophy. Conversations tend to be practical in a gladiator school. Which techniques work against which opponents? How to read a crowd's mood, the proper way to request mercy without looking cowardly. Soon you'll hear the sound of wooden swords striking shields, the grunts and calls of men pushing their bodies to their limits, and the constant commentary of trainers who treat human combat as a technical exercise requiring endless refinement. And the evening in what they euphemistically call tactical instruction, learning how to make your fights look more dramatic without actually increasing the likelihood of serious injury. Because while the crowd wants blood, the lanista wants his investments to last as long as possible. It's a delicate balance between authenticity and economics. Social niceties take on a different character when everyone at the table is trained to kill everyone else at the table. There's Gaius the Elder, not to be confused with Gaius the Drunk. And bread that's been baked specifically for gladiators, dense, nutritious, and about as flavorful as wet leather. The Romans have calculated the exact nutritional requirements for men who need to build muscle quickly and maintain it under stress. And they've distilled those requirements into the most efficient possible food. It keeps you alive and strong, but it doesn't particularly make you happy to be either. Who is probably still retching in the latrine, who trains gladiators in the use of the net and trident, and speaks about combat as if it were poetry. Which, in a way, it is. Violent, bloody poetry with a high mortality rate. Weapons practice that treats swords like dance partners, and the endless rehearsal of death scenes that look spontaneous but are actually carefully choreographed. Because even in mortal combat, Romans prefer good staging. The trainers will arrive with their wooden swords and their leather armor, ready to drill you in the finer points of dying well. And there's Doctor himself, whose real name no one knows, and whose job it is to transform men into marketable entertainment. He has the particular gift of being able to see potential death in every living thing, and he exercises this gift with the dedication of a true professional. Under his guidance, you've learned not just how to fight, but how to make fighting look like something worth paying to see. Your breakfast will consist of barley porridge mixed with beans, goat cheese if you're lucky. The dining hall will be filled with the usual collection of men who've found themselves in the gladiator business through various misfortunes. They'll all be there, eating their carefully measured portions and discussing the finer points of not dying in public. The light from your window has shifted now, indicating that the sun has moved higher in the sky, and the day's training is about to begin in earnest. You'll spend the morning working with weapons, the afternoon in physical conditioning. Your equipment hangs on pegs, driven into the stone wall. A practice sword made of wood, but weighted to feel like bronze. The helmet is particularly clever, engineered to deflect fatal blows, while leaving you vulnerable to the kind of wounds that bleed impressively, but heal relatively quickly. From outside comes the sound of a cart passing, probably carrying vegetables to the Forum Boreum, where merchants gather to sell cattle and other livestock. You can hear voices from the street, free Romans going about their daily business, complaining about taxes. The straw beneath you is compressed into something resembling a mattress, though it retains enough individual character to poke you in unexpected places throughout the night. Your body has adapted to this environment the way bodies do, finding rest where rest is possible, strength where strength is required, and a kind of resigned endurance for everything else. The adaptation hasn't been entirely physical, of course. Through the walls, you can hear the sounds of the city fully awakening. Cartwheels, animal calls, human voices raised in commerce and complaint. Your reflection in the water cup shows a face that's become leaner over the years, marked by small scars, and the particular alertness that comes from never being entirely safe. The Romans have specific preferences in gladiator appearance, and the trainers work to develop those preferences in their fighters. You've learned to move differently since coming to the ludus, more deliberately, with the kind of controlled grace that suggests you're always one step away from either dancing or killing. The morning call will come soon, the sound of horns that signals the beginning of the day's training. Your stomach has progressed from gentle complaint to active protest, reminding you that the human body requires fuel even when its primary function is entertainment. The social hierarchy in a ludus is complex and constantly shifting, based partly on fighting ability, partly on crowd appeal, and partly on the mysterious factors that determine whether someone lives through their scheduled encounters with mortality. Above you are the veterans who've survived long enough to earn names that the crowd remembers. Men whose scars have stories that other gladiators study like textbooks. Below you are the new arrivals, still adjusting to the reality that their lives are now public entertainment, still believing that skill and determination might be enough to earn freedom. The water stains that mark the passage of seasons, the small imperfections that prove this was made by human hands rather than carved by the gods. It's oddly comforting, this evidence of mortal craftsmanship in a place designed to house mortal combat. Sweet, really, in its optimism. The light has strengthened enough now that you can see details in the stonework of your cell, the tool marks left by the masons who built this place. The business of gladiator training runs on Roman time, which is to say precisely, and without regard for the personal preferences of the gladiators involved. Barley porridge is a treat to look forward to. Survival as success. Their working hands now, specialized tools for a specialized trade. It's the smell of normal life continuing, while yours has been suspended in this strange state of permanent preparation for public death. Sometimes you wonder if the scents have always been this vivid, or if the proximity of mortality has sharpened all your senses as a survival mechanism. So you've learned to breathe like a gladiator even when you're not fighting, steady, measured, ready. It's yet another way that your circumstances have reshaped not just what you do, but who you are at the most basic level. Even getting out of bed has become a tactical exercise, performed with the efficiency that your trainers demand in everything you do. Economy of motion, they call it, though what they really mean is not making yourself an easier target than necessary. The soft hands you once had, whatever you once did with them, have been replaced by instruments designed for a very specific kind of performance, where survival is measured in performance reviews, and where the only certain thing is the uncertainty of how long any of this will continue. How fitting, really, that even your betting should sound like the crowds that will someday applaud your final performance. Ready or not, the day has begun, and somewhere in the city above, people are already planning their afternoon's entertainment. The show, as they say, must go on. Everything in a gladiator's life eventually comes back to the arena, even the smallest details of daily existence. It's not the life you planned, but then again, very few people plan to become gladiators. It's more the kind of thing that happens to you while you're making other plans. Time to begin another day of learning how to die well, which is really just another way of learning how to live as long as possible under impossible circumstances. The irony would be funny if you weren't living it. The avoidance of serious injury as a victory worth celebrating. The human capacity for adaptation is truly extraordinary, even when the adaptation involves accepting the unacceptable as routine. It's as if your body has decided that if these might be among your last experiences of being alive, they should at least be thoroughly experienced. The sensory equivalent of not wanting to waste food when you do and know where your next meal is coming from. Efficiency above all else, even in matters of life and death. Especially in matters of life and death. From somewhere in the ludus comes the sound of someone practicing with chains, probably one of the retieri working on net techniques. The rhythmic whistle and snap of weighted rope is a sound you've grown to associate with concentrated effort and barely controlled violence. Morning exercises to maintain flexibility, weapon practice to refine technique, strength training to build the kind of muscles that photograph well under arena lighting. They've studied the most efficient ways to kill and the most entertaining ways to almost die, and they've built an entire industry around the intersection of those two skill sets. It's really quite remarkable when you think about it. Horrifying, but remarkable. Yes, photograph. That's not quite the right word, is it? The kind of muscles that look impressive from the cheap seats while you bleeding artistically into the sand. It's the soundtrack of professional preparation for amateur dramatics, if you think of death as amateur dramatics. Your daily routine has become as precisely calibrated as a military campaign, though the enemy is boredom and soft muscles rather than barbarian tribes. The Romans have turned violence into a science, complete with specialized equipment, professional trainers, and careful attention to presentation values. You can hear footsteps in the corridor again. Multiple sets this time, moving with the purposeful stride of people who had schedules to keep and property to maintain. The anticipation of breakfast has become almost pleasant, which tells you something about how thoroughly your expectations have been recalibrated by circumstances. Your hands bear calluses and patterns that would tell a story to anyone who knows how to read them. Sword grip here, shield handle there, the rope burn pattern that comes from net training. The morning air carries scents from the city beyond the ludus walls. Bread baking, animals in the streets, the smoke from countless cooking fires. Light, sound, smell, touch. Everything has become more intense since your life became something that could end for someone else as entertainment. Your breathing has changed too, become more deliberate. In the arena, breath control can mean the difference between a clean strike and a fatal hesitation. The horn call echoes through the ludus now, bouncing off stone walls and wooden doors with the authority of Roman organization. You rise from your straw mattress with the fluid motion that S becomes second nature. No wasted movement, no unnecessary sound. And so another day begins in the ludus, where men learn to transform their mortality into other people's entertainment. The straw rustles as you stand, a sound like applause from an audience of dried grass. Your feet touch the stone floor, and you're fully present in this moment, this place, this strange life that's been constructed around the Roman appetite for spectacle. And it will